So apparently, Canada burned the bridges. Oh, that's rich, coming from a guy who doesn't even live in Canada.
Yep, U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, broadcasting from his bunker in Michigan, said, "Canada's the problem. Buddy, you're supposed to be our ambassador, not our YouTube comment section."
So let's start with the line that made every Canadian spit out their coffee. The U.S. Ambassador, Pete Hoekstra, went on TV and said, and I quote, "Canada burned the bridges with America. Donald Trump did not slam the door."
Trump didn't slam the door? Dude, he's been trying to blow up our house since January. He's been playing chicken with Canada for 10 months straight, threatening our sovereignty, dangling tariffs like ransom notes, and bragging about how he could economically force annexation.
So true, the ad didn't burn bridges. It just lit up the part of the map that he was already setting fire to. Trump tore up Kuzma in everything but paperwork, the same deal he once called the greatest in history. He's been adding tariffs like a toddler with stickers. No congressional approval, no due process, just chaos on cue.
And then, after the infamous ad air, he hit Canada with another 10% tariffs from his airplane. You can't just play with international diplomacy every time you lose an argument, Donald. It's not Twitter, it's trade.
He treats tariffs like Snapchat, impulsive, petty, and gone by morning. But let's be real, Trump thrives on chaos. He was never going to hammer out a deal by Thanksgiving. He needs perpetual conflict. It's his oxygen.
And the ambassador knows it. He's out there spinning his fairy tale that everything was almost done. No, Pete, the only thing Trump was close to finishing was another fast food combo before hitting wheels up to Malaysia.
Canada didn't slam the door shut. Trump welded it closed from the inside. Then he blamed us for not knocking.
And now we're getting lectured that we burned bridges. No, what happened is Canada finally talked directly to the American people and told them the truth. And Trump, he couldn't handle the truth.
Here's what set them off. Ontario aired an ad in the U.S. using Ronald Reagan's own words during the World Series. This was straight from the Reagan archives warning Americans that high tariffs destroyed jobs and triggered depressions. Totally legal, cleared by U.S. lawyers, public domain. Check, check, check.
That's it. That's the crime. We quoted a Republican president to Republican voters about basic economics. We held up a mirror, and the mirror, it screamed back.
And Hoekstra called that foreign interference. He said Canada was meddling in U.S. domestic politics, trying to influence their Supreme Court and trying to sway their state elections and midterms. He's basically accusing Canada of election interference because we ran an economic ad.
Are you kidding me? The United States has spent my entire adult life funding messaging in other people's countries. They bankroll candidates abroad, they run op-eds, they do pressure campaigns, they sanction threats and military pressure. And now suddenly a 60-second TV spot during the World Series is foreign interference? Shut the front door!
And let's be super clear here, because they're hoping that people miss this. The Reagan ad did not tell Americans how to vote. It didn't endorse a candidate. It didn't attack the Supreme Court. It literally just said that tariffs cost you jobs and raise your bills. That's not election interference. That's economics 101 with better lighting and graphics.
Hoekstra isn't mad because Canada interfered. He's mad because it worked.
He even admitted it accidentally. He said the ad reached Americans in swing states and blew up negotiations. In other words, Americans heard the truth and started asking, wait a minute, why are we paying more for lumber and cars so Trump can scream at Canada?
And that's the part the Trump Republicans cannot allow. Trump needs to control the story. He needs to tell his voters, I'm fighting Canada to protect you, without those voters hearing that he's actually the reason your house just jumped $30,000 more in price.
So instead of dealing with their own problem, they're screaming foreign meddling. They're screaming, Canada interfered with our Supreme Court. They're trying to make us look like the villain so that they don't have to say out loud, yeah, We jacked up prices on our own citizens for optics.
And now here's the gaslight move of the century. Hoekstra is out here saying, we almost had a big trade deal. We were close. We could have had a breakthrough by Thanksgiving. He said it was all basically done and then Canada ruined it.
Come on, Pete. Trump was never going to sign a fair deal by Thanksgiving. Trump doesn't do stability. He does chaos because chaos keeps him centered in the frame. He doesn't want a solved problem. He wants a forever problem that he can keep yelling about.
Exactly. Doug Ford even said it yesterday. If it wasn't the ad, he'd just look out the window and say, the leaves have changed color. And then he'd blow up the talks anyway. And that is exactly right. Trump is always just waiting for an excuse.
And Hoekstra, instead of admitting that, is trying to frame Canada as disloyal. That's the word game. Canada's disloyal. Canada's anti-American. Canada started a trade war.
We didn't start a trade war. We started telling the truth out loud to the Americans who are paying the bill for Trump's ego.
And that's why he's melting down. That's why the ambassador is scolding us like we're naughty children. Because for the first time in a long time, Canada said no. Out loud, in public, on American television.
Call it what it is. This isn't diplomacy at all. It's intimidation. They want us to stay quiet, stop talking to our voters, don't correct the narrative, and maybe, just maybe, we'll let you keep selling us cars and lumber.
And Canada finally said it. They said no. That's what this is. That's what the shift is.
So let's talk about who this Pete Hoekstra is anyway.
Well, he was born in the Netherlands and raised in Michigan. The irony that a Dutch-born man from a country Canada literally liberated from World War II is now gaslighting Canadians about burning bridges is chef's kiss hypocrisy.
It's surreal. He's defending a government that jails opponents, bans reporters, and calls truth the enemy. Canada fought to free his homeland, and now he's defending the same machine that censors scapegoats and rewrites reality.
Funny how fast some people forget the lessons of the 1940s when their careers depend on pretending to not see the signs.
The playbook's the same. Control the message, punish dissent, and blame everyone else when your empire starts to crumble.
So let's remember, Hoekstra is one big failure in business and politics. Failed gubernatorial candidate, failed Senate candidate, and now a failed diplomat.
This man has a record of failure long enough to stretch across the Windsor-Detroit Bridge, which, by the way, Canada helped finance and kept running when the U.S. infrastructure stalled.
So, when you lose enough elections, apparently you get promoted to ambassador. You know, Trump rewards loyalty, not competence. We all know that. And Pete was loyal. He defended the Iraq WMD fairy tale, the Muslim ban, and Project 2025.
You heard that right. He backed Project 2025. You know, the whole hardline crackdown we're seeing right now, the whole purge of the civil service and the rollback of rights. Now he's here, well, technically not here, representing America and Canada. Except he doesn't even live in Canada. He just phones it in from Michigan.
Literally. This is the man trying to manage one of the world's most important bilateral relationships by Zoom. You're not the ambassador to Ottawa, Pete. You're the ambassador of outrage.
And this isn't Pete's first time embarrassing his country.
Nope. As ambassador to the Netherlands, he pushed anti-Muslim conspiracy claims, saying that extremists were causing chaos and no-go zones in Dutch cities, something Dutch officials said was completely false. Then he tried to deny ever saying it on camera, while cameras were literally playing the clip back to him.
He was so bad, the Dutch press basically turned him into a national meme. And now he's calling us the problem?
But here's the real scandal. Why are our news networks still giving this guy a microphone? They're all falling over themselves to air his talking points like they're gospel.
It's like they forgot he's a political appointee, not a policymaker. Ambassadors don't negotiate trade deals. They read cue cards from Washington, or in Pete's case, cue cards from Trump's social media feed.
And yet CTV calls him the key voice of the U.S. Please. This guy couldn't get invited to a Tim Hortons drive-thru without a clearance code.
Canadian media needs to stop this false narrative balance. Both sides doesn't work when one side is threatening to annex Canada.
And we've seen this before, right? Fox rants foreign interference, and Canadian news airs the clip anyway. And suddenly, every network's giving Hoekstra and Trump millions in free airtime while pretending to be shocked. It's like banning a book by putting it on the bestseller list.
The Canadian press needs to take a page from the Dutch news. And let's be clear here. Hoekstra isn't freelancing. He's Trump's mouthpiece. The same Trump who's turning America into a banana republic, minus the potassium.
Hoekstra parrots every Trump talking point, that Canada's anti-American and Canada's interfering, and that our ads are a tax. That's not diplomacy, that's propaganda for exploit.
And our networks amplify it, owned by telecom billionaires who love deregulation and tax cuts.
Bell owns CTV, Chorus owns Global, and both clean up when conservatives win. So they platform Pete and call it news.
Meanwhile, the rest of the world just sees a spoiled president melting down over a Reagan quote and a Dutch-born ambassador phoning it in from Michigan.
That's not diplomacy, people. It's dinner theater. In Canada, we deserve better.
But they underestimated us. They thought we'd point the finger and blame each other. Instead, it lit a fire. Ontario, BC, Manitoba premiers, and the Maritimes, even mayors in Ontario, are backing Ford's ad. They're all basically saying, we're done being polite.
Wab Kinew put out a video backing Ford. Wab is NDP, Ford, conservative. Opposite sides of the spectrum, but same Team Canada. Nobody, not one premier, well, except Danielle Smith, who's MAGA light anyway, and not one federal minister is apologizing for it. They're calling it patriotic, clever, and effective. Well, because it was.
And BC isn't just clapping from the sidelines. David Eby, another NDP leader, is literally following suit. He's already said British Columbia is going to run its own anti-tariff campaign in the U.S. markets next month. They're going to directly target American consumers. Because Americans need to hear how tariffs raise prices. We're making ads to defend British Columbia and Canadian forestry workers. That's the line.
And here's the part that should make Washington nervous. BC is opening a forest trade office in London in the UK to sell into Europe instead of begging the US to behave. The province straight up said, we're not sitting idly by while the US slaps 45% fees on our forest products. They're literally building new customers and cutting out the ones who treat us like we're disposable.
So Ontario did it with Reagan, now BC is doing it with 2x4s.
This time, Canada isn't just appealing to Washington politicians. We're talking straight to American consumers and saying, hey, your house is more expensive because of him. And that's exactly why the US ambassador is melting down and accusing Canada of burning bridges. He can see where this goes. If Canadian provinces start carving the US out of their export plans and educating US voters about who's actually raising their cost of living, well then Washington loses leverage.
Let's underline this for the audience. BC is not begging for mercy. BC is actively replacing the US market. They're locking in Europe, they're eyeing North Africa, and they already have trade offices in Asia. They're saying to the US, you are no longer our only buyer. This is step one in economic independence.
Which means the threat flips. It's not Canada will suffer without America, it's America is about to find out what life looks like without Canadian lumber, keeping their housing costs from exploding. And that's the shift we're talking about. For years, every province would say, don't escalate. Now they're saying, run the ads. Pull US booze off the shelves. Only buy Canadian-made cars, or from our European or Mexican allies. Also, open offices overseas. And tell Americans that their home rentals just got more expensive because of Trump. This is not panic, this is strategy.
And here's what's actually happening outside the Trump bubble. Canada is respected around the world. Trump is not.
Nope. Trump yells tariffs so often that global markets barely even blink anymore. He screams emergency every week and the world has figured out it's mostly for TV.
He keeps calling every tariff mission critical and every ally unfair. But look at the pattern. He threatens, stalls, never signs the order, and then flies off for a photo op. Other countries see it, other leaders see it, and it's the boy who cried wolf over trade war.
And he proved our point from the plane. He literally announced the new 10% tariffs mid-air, bragging about it like a flex.
He showed it had nothing to do with fentanyl or trade or security. It was about losing face. He threw a hissy fit from Air Force One.
And now, the spin machine is scrambling to rewrite the story. Suddenly, it's Canada interfered in domestic politics. Please. They're terrified someone's going to notice what really happened. Trump slapped tariffs because he got embarrassed.
Fox and mega media are already framing it as foreign meddling to protect him, because they know if this hits the courts, it exposes the lie.
Exactly right, Deb. The Supreme Court's going to have a look at it and say, so this wasn't about security at all. It's just what Trump does when he's backed into a corner. Find a villain, make it Canada, and call it patriotism.
Although we all know nothing will be done because the Supreme Court is in Trump's back pocket. But they've been exposed anyway, and that's the pattern. Chaos, blame, repeat. He doesn't solve problems, he performs them.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mark Carney is building bridges at ASEAN, proving that Canada is a reliable partner who honors contracts and doesn't weaponize supply chains. We are an unabashed energy superpower, he said. And we're about to double non-US exports, leaving Trump scrambling to find critical minerals and lumber.
And that's not anti-American, that's pro-Canadian. We're building alternate customers so that we're never again economically held hostage to one unstable politician with a phone and a grudge.
This is exactly what unions and premiers are saying now, by the way. Steel workers, forestry workers, they're not begging Trump to like us. They're saying, we've made concessions and got nothing back. It's time American voters hear the truth about who's actually raising their costs.
According to polling at CNN, almost half of Canadians now see the U.S. as a threat or potential threat. That's not a blip. That's a national mood shift.
And as Ford said, Trump only respects force. He does not respond to calm negotiation, data, civility, appeals to history. He responds to pressure. So we're applying pressure economically.
And it's not just up to the government. Canadian public can do their part too. Don't buy American-built cars. Ask where they're made. Spend vacations here, abroad, but not in the USA. Buy Canadian wine and spirits. Check labels at the grocery store. We have already hit them hard with booze and travel, so let's double down and get serious everywhere else.
What you'll notice here is Canada is winning the PR war. Ford's ad went viral, BC is running its own anti-tariff campaign next month, and Canadians are buying Canadian, traveling local, and cutting back on cross-border spending.
We're awake, and every time Hoekstra opens his mouth, more Canadians realize who's actually burning the bridges. Washington.
So, mission accomplished. We stood up, we hit back, and we're still standing. And we'll do it again tomorrow.
And if you're with us, hit subscribe, join the A-Team, and share this so more Canadians hear this story from us and not from Pete's talking points.
And if you're watching from Michigan, please let your ambassador know that Canada's north of you. He keeps acting like we report to him. You know, we've always had a great relationship with our Michigan neighbors, and we'd love to keep it that way.
See you next time, everyone.
Thanks for watching.